Hi, this is John Solari from the Method Actors Speaks, and today I'm with the wonderful, beautiful, talented
Thank you.
Angelica Nicholson.
Angela.
Angela. I come from a neighborhood where you're not supposed to know names, and you have such a low voice. Who's in lifetime member of the Actors Studio, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how when she worked on Garbo and this, and we'll talk a lot about a lot of good things. And I'm really, really grateful that you agreed to come on the show. But as I like to ask my guests, why did you become an actor?
Wow. I don't ever remember a time in my life not wanting to be an actor.
Really?
I kind of knew at the age of 3 or 4, and I started out dancing and singing, and I saw Gene Kelly movies on TV, and I wanted to be Gene Kelly.
Really? You didn't want to be Sid Charisse?
I wanted to be Gene Kelly. It's very strange for a straight woman to say, but it's true.
Well,
he was my idol. So.
Well, it's a good idol to have.
I knew from a very small age. I never didn't know. I always knew.
So you knew you wanted to be an actor, and then how did it happen?
My mother, thankfully, noticed that streak in me and encouraged it. And so I had dance lessons from a young age and piano lessons. And when I was a teenager, I was old enough to start studying acting, which I did with a teacher in the DC area where I grew up. And then as soon as I could, I got my butt to New York City right after high school. I went to NYU for a while, and then I danced on scholarship at Alvin Ailey. And
wow, that's really impressive at Alvin Ailey, yes.
That was incredible, incredible training in many, many different ways, which I'll tell you about later. But and also studied voice and acting, and went through several teachers in New York as far as acting teachers go. But really my big teacher, I'm condensing this for you, John.
Yeah, sure.
My big turnaround teacher in New York was Gene Frankel.
Right, well known.
And Gene Frankel, who of course was a contemporary of Strasberg. Lee Strasberg went into teaching, and Gene went more into directing, but he was an incredible teacher. And he was the one who really started me down the method path.
Well, NYU and all that, that's where I started out acting. Oh. I was attending bar on Bleecker Street there, which is right around the corner there. Yeah. And this woman, Renata Manhart, she was from Germany. This was 1967. And there was a bar on the corner called the Village Corner. I don't know if it's still there.
I think it still is.
Yeah. And she asked me one day if would you like to be an actor? And on a bet, my friends told me to do it. And I went up there and I won a scholarship. It was on LaGuardia Place there, in the middle of the block, on the 6th floor. Oh, okay. So I won a scholarship to acting, and that's how I got it. And as you know, back then, wow. Instead of picking up a script, I picked up a gun, and I wanted to be a Mickey Mouse gangster more than I wanted to be an actor, and which was true. And I went away because she had recommended in 1967 that I go to Actors Studio, but it took me years later, 1985, when I got there. Okay. But it just happened to make that. But now, I was talking to someone earlier in the first show we did about how the difference between New York actors and LA actors, do you see the big difference, or is there a difference to you?
Gosh, that's toughy, because I am a New York actor and now I'm an LA actor. So I think I'm a little bit, I've got a foot in both worlds a little bit. And after being in LA for so many years, I sort of need to throw away my previous prejudice.
Prejudice, great word.
That New York training is so much better than LA training, because it's simply not true. There are some incredible teachers here in LA.
But most of them come from New York?
Well, some of them do. That's true, John. I know where John's prejudices lie. But you know, when I was in my 20s and I was studying in New York, I thought that was the center of the universe, and all the good teachers were in New York, and New York training was the training to have, and that's why I went there after high school, and I'm still very proud of my New York training. But,
I am too.
But the teachers I've had out here have been pretty incredible too.
I believe that. The reason why I brought it up, and I'm going to tell the audience right now, is I brought it up because I remember when you came to the studio, and I remember watching your work in LA here, and I thought, my God, this is, what a gift.
Thank you.
No, don't thank me, you did it, and I've said this to people. I have seen no one on stage since Salome Jens like you.
Thank you.
No.
Wow.
Really,
Wow.
this woman on stage, folks, is just absolutely breathtakingly beautiful and talented. I mean, it's that, some people have it and some people don't. You have that presence of,
Thank you, John.
no, don't thank me. I mean, that's a gift that you can't be taught that. I just want the audience to know that when I watched you on stage, I was just so blown away. And I remember seeing you walking around, always being so quiet and never really this and that. But the few times that you did critique, it was right on. And then to watch you work, because I do watch that. You know, I see a lot of people who know how to critique, but don't know how to act. In fact, it's like so. I mean, you know, they know about the. I mean, they know how they know. You know, I'm saying it's John Solari. She's not. You know, I see they know how to critique, but I don't see that they really know how to do the work.
Well, when I was younger, when I first became a member at the studio, and I was younger than I am now, I was a lot more full of, I just was full of beans, you know, I was ready to go all the time. And every scene that I saw, like, I wanted to critique, I wanted to say something. I had all sorts of things to say. And now I'm a little mellower, you know, I very rarely put my hand up, because I know that whatever I'm thinking, it's going to get said by somebody. And
Yeah,
perhaps more
true.
eloquently than I could say it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll make a little note and see if I'm on target, you know, when Marty talks after the scene, or some of the teachers there, you know, Kathy and Salome and some of the, you know, really wise people that we've got, see if I'm on target with the notes I've taken during the scene.
And well, Marty mostly runs the Friday, and then we have Lou Antonio, who does the Wednesday sessions, which are totally different,
Yeah.
where he lets no one critique, which I enjoy too. But
Yes. Both things are good.
his sessions are more of redirecting you, in a sense, which I enjoy.
It's fun, and it's great to get because he doesn't open the floor to critique. We have the extra time to rework the scene, and that's a great learning tool.
And the second time is usually the best.
Yeah, and he always has something so interesting to say that it's going to spark you up to the next level.
He'll tell you something in your ear, and hopefully you'll get to work with him. And I'm looking over at our other guests, but we have no cameraman, so I can't, you know, move the camera. But before we go on, you had something you wanted to say. The voice will.
Oh, yeah.
About you and Charlie,
Yeah, I just really appreciated studying with Charlie Lawton because you had talked earlier about the things that nobody tells you, or the things that you want to know what to improve on, and most of the time people won't say anything, or they'll compliment you, and you want to know. And Charlie used to be really clear about talking. He would convey a lot to me, and I mean he used to say things. Well, he said this to the whole class: just move when you move.
have a reason to move.
Move when you move, because it just seemed like there's that, you're intellectualizing all this, you're not fully grounded and breathing properly, and there are all the things you want to do, and it's not executed the way you want, and it's because he used to also say, let go and let you, and just let go of your ego or whatever it is, feeling observed or feeling watched or feeling like you have to accomplish something fabulous, and just be your own fabulousness. So,
And that takes, you know, paradoxically, a lot of training to do. Before I came to the studio and I was studying with Mark Monroe, he is also a great method teacher, and he also had studied with Jean Franco in New York. The highest compliment he ever paid me was one night I did a scene, and he said, "Angela, your technique's not showing."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, thank you." You know, for me, that was a huge milestone for me, because when you can get to the point, and of course it's, you know, when you're there, you're never completely there. It's something you work on for the rest of your life. But when you get to that point where you can, you know, get out of your way and let your instrument take over and make those decisions for you. You know,
Yes.
you train your instrument for so many years to make these decisions for you. And like Jean Franco used to say, and I never understood this when I was 27, he said, "Just bite the apple." And, you know, he used to say that, you know, when you're eating an apple, you bite the apple, you don't think about how you're going to chew it, how you're going to swallow it, you don't discuss, you know, when it's going down, you know, and you don't tell your stomach what to do, and you just bite the apple. And emotionally, you know, hopefully that's the point that we get to as actors. You know, about 12 years after Jean said that to me, that the light bulb went off above my head, you know, and I was in LA, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's what he meant. Just bite the apple."
Yes. It is. It's true. It's just, God, but that's a great analogy. Just bite the apple.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple, and
It's not always easy, but it's simple.
Right.
That's what I learned from Jean Franco.
That's-
It's not always easy, but it's simple. It's very, very simple.
yes, it's so much. That's what we try to at the studio. And you know, I know Marty Landau when they try to talk about that, and also about, you know, he does say, excuse me, when he does say, make it big. Now, make this a big apple.
Uh-huh.
Does somebody have a phone, or is that me?
That was you just hearing angels.
Oh,
No,
hearing from the angel.
that was my phone beeping.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's fine. It's just, that's what's great about this.
I'll turn it down.
What I'm saying is, no, it's all right. What I'm saying is that the apple, if you're going to be eating that apple, and they say make it big,
A big important apple.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every scene should be life or death, or it just doesn't deserve to be on stage.
And so
That's
in
what
a way that
I think it was Marty that said that last week.
Right. Oh,
Again,
Marty,
he says
again.
it many times, but yeah.
But what I'm saying, that almost contradicts the other, you know, about just eating the apple.
Well, I don't think so.
No, okay, please explain. You know, I mean, really, you know, I'm learning all the time myself. But I mean, it sounded like that.
Well,
I'm saying for the audience.
Well, what I do when I'm working on a scene, I mean, of course, I make
Talk about Garbo, working on
I-
Garbo.
Oh, I will in a second.
Okay.
Let me just get this out of my mouth. I make a lot of decisions about what I think the need is and everything. But when I'm working on preparing for the scene, I do something I used to do in Mark's class was called an active prep, where I will emotionally prepare for the scene either in a sensory way, or by talking to a personalization, or somehow connecting with my emotional life that matches up to that scene. And I always make sure that I choose something in my prep, and if I don't, I re-choose something that is where the stakes are very high, and there's a very important need that goes quite deep, and usually a deep wound that accompanies that need. So I try to emotionally prepare that big, and I think that's what Jean meant when he said bite the apple. And you really sink your teeth into something that's very important. And then once you sink your teeth into it, you bite it, and you bite it hard, and you don't think about what your teeth are doing when you're chewing it, and how it's going down. It's almost like that's your springboard, and that will get you into the scene.
Right, yeah. That makes
Does that make
sense. It makes sense to the audience. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you to say it, so the audience understands, because it does sound, you know, like we're talking about just eat the apple, but make it a big apple and every scene. But there is a logic to that, and it does work if you just do it the way you just, you know, gladly said it. and to make sure this thing's running. The time is running on that, right? You can see that there. Because when I heard that beep, you'll see it. It's running, the time.
It stopped. 3 hours. Oh yeah, it's running. It's running.
Oh, great. Okay.
15.
Because
Then we're still on.
I don't think I can
Okay.
say all that stuff all over.
That was such
on.
a great thing. And all the, okay, thank you. Now we're going to talk a little bit about you, if you might, in Garbo.
Okay.
How did that come about? And how did you work on it?
It's kind of an interesting story. And I don't know how much time you have.
No, I know. We got another 10 minutes.
Well,
At least.
the play is called Garbo's Cuban Lover. And it has been done 3 or 4 times in LA by this producer over the years. So many years ago, she mounted a production of Garbo's Cuban Lover. And I auditioned, and she asked me to, she had already cast Garbo, she asked me to double for Garbo because the Garbo that she had cast could not do all the performances. So I started learning the part, and okay, I'm just going to say this in public. It got a little uncomfortable because the actress who was playing Garbo became very uncomfortable having me at rehearsals, watching her process. So it became a little too, the whole rehearsal process became a little too uncomfortable, so I bowed out of the production at that time. And then many, many years later, oh shit, I better turn off my phone. And I will turn it down. Now, always turn your phone off before an important appointment. Acting 101. So now I'm turning it all the way down. Okay. So anyhow, 10 years later, I ran into this producer again, and she said, I'm going to be doing Garbo, and come in for the auditions. So I did, and this time she cast me as Garbo.
10 years later?
10 years later! Frankly, I was kind of surprised because I thought maybe I was getting a little long in the tooth to play Greta Garbo. And so this time she cast me as Garbo, and the show went very well. We got LA Weekly Pick of the Week, and maybe that's just, sometimes that's just how things are supposed to happen. You know, maybe I wasn't ready to play the part then, or maybe I would, you know, playing it now, I got more out of it. Who knows? Maybe I did a better job of it 10 years later. I'm not sure, but things happen the way they're supposed to happen.
Wow, that's interesting.
So,
what did you think of Garbo?
And the producer said to me at one point, she said, I guess you were just meant to play Garbo.
Garbo.
Because, you know, 10 years go by and finally the part drops into my lap.
What did you think of the character, Garbo? What did you feel about her, personally?
She is a really interesting woman to play because she's not always sympathetic. She was a great artist, a great actress. She was incredibly specific in her acting in a time when a lot of people were really very, very big and theatrical on film. She was very specific and intimate with her acting. In her personal life, she was personally distant sometimes from people, and a lot of people interpret her as selfish, and of course there's that famous "I want to be alone." Yeah. But
did you use the voice?
She was. Oh yeah.
Let's hear that again. That was really great.
I want to be alone.
Great.
Yeah, the accent was
And
funny.
how did she compare when you know, as an actor, when I play a role, I've always played. If I were this character, how would I do it? I don't know if it worked that way, or if there was...
Oh yeah, I mean, you always have to bring some of yourself to the character. But, you know, from what I was saying before, you know, she's not always a sympathetic person, and her behavior was sometimes, you know, it could be interpreted as mean, you know, some of her behavior. And when you're playing someone like that, you have to find really good reasons for them to be doing all the things they're doing. So I had to find really good reasons for my character for me as Greta Garbo to do and say the things I was doing and saying. Otherwise, it becomes two-dimensional.
Yes.
And for some reason in my life, I've been cast as the bitch a lot.
Really?
I have no idea why. I don't know anyone like that. So I've had a lot of experience kind of exploring this part of my nature and trying to make characters like that not necessarily sympathetic, because I think that might be overcompensating, but authentic. Authentic enough so that the audience can see some humanity in them, and the audience can see that, yes, maybe there's a reason why she's behaving that way. And then, no matter how evil you are, the audience will open their heart to you in a certain way, and maybe even root for you in a certain way. And you won't just be a cartoon or somebody who's fulfilling a plot. What am I trying to say here? Someone who is, forwarding the plot in a particular way by being evil,
Right.
You really have to flesh out the humanity even more with a character like that. Mm. But I find Greta Garbo fascinating enough, and even after playing her, and the show's closed now for a month, or show's closed now for 2 months, and I still keep reading books about her because she's so fascinating.
Well, that's almost like being a method actor, where we stay in character.
Yeah.
Even before, during, and after.
And the more I read about her, the more sympathy I have for who she was and how she behaved. She had a lot of early wounds. She lost her father at a very early age. She grew up in poverty. So there's a lot of circumstances there that are really interesting.
And what are you working on now? I do anything now?
I just did a reading of Tom Baum's new play, and he's a playwright that sometimes puts his work up at the studio. Very prolific playwright and screenwriter, Tom Baum. Look him up on IMDb. And his new play is called Front Door Open, and it's a 4-character play, 3 generations. So we just did a reading for investors and backers, and there's a couple played by Richard Benjamin and Joanna Miles, fabulous actors, and I play their daughter. And I show up on their doorstep with my teenage daughter, unexpectedly, because circumstances have happened that have, thrown us all back together after some years of estrangement. And the hijinks ensue from there. And it's a delightful play, and we just put it in front of audiences on Sunday, a few days ago, and got some feedback, and hopefully we'll be putting it into production really soon.
There's no chance of it going into writer's unit and putting it up there? Because Joanna's a member too.
I know, but I think we might be one step past that and
okay.
ready for a theater.
Oh, you're ready for it, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things that's really to work out the kinks and develop it.
I think when it was a one-act, Tom developed this play from a one-act into a full-length play. When it was a one-act, it was called Inside Out. I think he did put it up at Writers and Directors Unit.
That's a very good
yeah.
unit. I mean, the things that go on there. We have a few minutes left.
And it was the reading was directed by Asad Khaleda, who is just incomparable, wonderful director.
And for young actors out there, what would you recommend they do to become actors?
Train, and keep your training separate from your showcasing.
How does your dance training come into your acting?
Oh, how does it come in good ways or bad ways or
whatever
both?
way?
Okay. Dance. When you're dancing, it's very technical, and you come from a place of. You can't help it as a dancer. You come from a place of self-criticism. You're always looking in the mirror for the flaw, and you want to control. Everything is held. Everything is controlled. While you're training, when you get to performance, you can let it all out. But I find that dancers and myself when I was a young dancer, they approach their acting with an enormous degree of control, especially physical control. And they're so hyper aware of their bodies and what position their body is in, and so that tends to creep into their acting until they can loosen up and let go of it a little bit. So that crept into my acting a little bit, but the wonderful thing about dance is that you cannot be successful as a dancer without a great work ethic. And I find that also bleeds over into my acting, this work ethic to rehearse and look for how ways in which it can be improved, and just rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and just sort of doggedly keep at it like you would at any craft. Acting's not magic, and sometimes, especially when you're new to it, you think, oh, if I just, there's some kind of magic potion and then everything's going to, fire on all jets at the same time. But no, it's a craft like any other craft, and you have to approach it that way, and I think dancers have a great discipline.
It's one of the things that why I compare you to Salome Jens, who studied with Martha Graham. When I watch you...
I didn't know that Salome studied with Martha Graham.
Yes.
Graham was always one of my favorite techniques.
And when I watch you, your movement on the stage is so beautiful. And it's like a ballerina.
Thank you.
And Salome is the same thing. It's that movement. It's so relaxed and smooth.
She's very expressive. Even when she's sitting and critiquing, she's very expressive.
I
should have guessed that she studied with Graham. The wonderful thing about Graham, and you can shut me up if I'm talking too much.
No, go ahead.
The wonderful thing about Graham, and it was my favorite class when I was at Alvin Ailey's, was that instead of holding everything, in ballet, you hold your torso is one piece. In classical dance, your torso is one piece, and you move everything else around your torso. In Graham, it's based on contraction and release. So there's something that's very, that puts you very much in touch with your organic self in Graham.
Right.
It's much more organic, and it's much more sort of emotionally connected because of that contraction, release, and it's quite beautiful and satisfying in that way,
You sound like it was satisfying.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Fun.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. This has been a gift for me and for our audience, and I'm not ashamed to say I believe you really are a gift to us from the Actors Studio and from Alvin Ailey and New York actors. I always found New York actors and European actors really want to train. I mean, we're in a business today where I find they want to be movie stars, not actors.
Yeah.
Today, which is
and
sad.
And some young people, get lucky and they get there before their training catches up with them. And I've had the privilege to coach some young actors who are at that point in their career and sort of, guide them to catching up with themselves, catching up with their fame, craft-wise. And
well, as coaching, how do people get in touch with you for that?
I don't know if I should put
you could do anything
email.
you want.
I'll put an email address. Angela531@sbcglobal.net. That was a blog.
Gigi wants to know it.
But,
okay.
And you can also, of course, find me on Facebook and on IMDb and all the regular places. But I will soon have a coaching website, and then I can direct people to that.
That'd be great, and we'll have you back on. Once again, this is John Solari from The Method Actor Speaks. If you want to come on the show, just get in touch with The Method Actor Speaks at Gmail or 818-773-0991. I like to speak correct. I learned how to speak by listening to Nat King Cole records. Because you had
my father was a
big
great
fan.
Yeah.
Well, you had to open your mouth when you listen to Nat King Cole. And I always do that. And she said, 1 minute we have left. And thank you again. This is Angela Nicholson coming on the show. And please feel free to come on anytime again. And this will be up. This is October. It'll be up tonight. And and you'll get to see this is part 2. So once again, thank you folks, and enjoy the show, because we got some gifts coming.